G'day, listeners. You're back with Benny, Banksy, and Boydie, the basketball blokes, dribbling all things Aussie hoops and NBL Fantasy.
That's right, and we're back with the third member of the basketball blokes. Welcome back, Banksy.
I'm here, boys. I'm running out of excuses as to not join you, seeing as we can't leave the house, but I'm back.
Good to have you back, mate. And this will be our lockdown locks episode of the podcast. But not that, Banksy, you would have watched our last podcast episodes, but we've been going through the news as it's been coming through. And Boydie, I think that's probably a good spot to start, is some of the news that's come through since last time we spoke to everyone.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to throw your notes here in disarray, and I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last week has been Lamar Patterson.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that. You've got to. Well, you've already thrown us out of array. Well done. He had one
that's
job.
That's the biggest news. All right, we'll get back into that one, I guess. The first one was Cairns, I guess, solidifying their bench with the signing of Jared Kenny, the man with the mullet.
That's right. So you'll probably be able to see this in a moment, Boydie. We've got you a picture of your fine mullet up on this feed now. We are on Periscope on Twitter Live. Hopefully the video doesn't lag too much, given that everyone is home and the NBN could be struggling. If not, this will all be recorded and we'll be able to put a link up later on anyway. So I thought, great, Jared Kenny, a mullet at a Bunnings Stadium.
Oh, look at that.
Like, you couldn't get a better fit, right?
Yep.
But then the news yesterday, Banksy, he's going to shave it off for charity. Can you believe it? Jared Kenny's shaving the mullet.
Worst news ever. I did say that on. I think I replied to Liam's tweet about it, saying oh, this is the worst news. I thought the lockdown was the worst news, but it's the worst news it is.
Yeah. Well, look, as a man who's grown a sensational mullet, which we've got pictured here on screen before. Is there any chance that he's likely to get that back before the start of the season in December?
I think he'll have a little one back, I reckon, by then, but I'm not too sure how long. It depends on how fast his hair grows.
And Banksy, from a fantasy perspective, Jared Kenny's probably not that relevant to us. You'd have to agree there?
Obviously, totally irrelevant, but speaking of fresh cuts, Boyd, it seems you've had one this morning. It's looking very dusty-like.
Yes, I'm having a bit of a fun. I've started my own barbershop in my own ensuite bathroom. So, Boyd's Barbers operates.
Can we have a look at the back? What's the back looking like? Oh, jeez. Is there? Oh, wow. Okay. Any coincidence that your better half supports the Tigers?
No coincidence at all, I don't think.
Well,
no, I'm just doing it for shits and giggles, I guess.
Oh, well.
Yeah, look, with the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix top on, it's the start of a Mitch Creek fade hawk, I think, probably going on there. So
yeah, that's what I'm going with. I'm going a bit of Mitch Creek. It looks pretty good. I'm just checking myself out in the. It's slightly delayed in my Periscope screen. Not a bad looking rooster, I tell you.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, the one other takeaway, I think, which has probably been a theme of Cairns' off-season, is they're going to have some continuity. I know Jared Kenny for us isn't relevant for fantasy, but how good is it that Cairns are getting some of these players back and they're going to have not complete roster turnover, which they've been forced to have for year on year. So that's pretty good, I reckon.
Yeah, it is good. And look, you say it's irrelevant, but I think it's going to be interesting to see if the smaller rosters have an effect, and we have. It means there's slightly more minutes to go around for the whole team. So it's going to depend on how many, how teams adjust to that, I guess. Not many teams used the full allotment of rosters for playing time each game last year. So maybe it'll have no effect, but there's going to be certain times for sure where I think it might have a little bit of effect, but we won't know until it starts. But yeah, that's my
all right. Yeah, look, for some reason I've made myself tiny on the screen there. I'm trying to make myself tiny in general, but I'll just try and fix that up. But you've applied that logic, Boyd, to Kenny. Can you do the same for the next signing that we wanted to talk about, Kevin White?
Yeah, Kevin White. Look, what's he going to back up Norton over in Perth, depending on what happens with the situation over there with Cotton. Look, I think it just means maybe Cotton's going to play a bit more minutes and handle the ball a little bit more. We know he's almost like a combo guard that does that anyway at times. So Kevin White's just there purely for that defensive backup role, I think. So I'm not sure that he's going to be any relevant.
Yeah. Well, I've got the rolling rosters up on basketballblokes.com, and first time we've had John Banksy to say thank you. So Kevin White just sitting there in the backup point guard position. I think that it's once again, I don't think it's probably going to be relevant for fantasy. We love fantasy stats, but there was a tweet here from Greg Hire. Have you got the run sheet up there, Banksy? Are you able to read out that tweet or not?
It's quite small, my end, Benny, but it says something along the lines of...
So I think it sums it up pretty good.
5 championships in 7 years. Pretty good track record in recruiting. Championships aren't won in the off-season, let alone halfway through the season, as some believe. Whitey is a vocal leader, brings toughness and holds people accountable. That's weird. Reminds me of someone they just lost.
Yeah, so I think that sums it up. Good for basketball reasons, but I still find that interesting, this vocal leader, and just to think of how it all ended in Adelaide. That's going to be interesting to see how different clubs appreciate different types of leaders, I guess. So I've just moved down to the next player that's been signed on the rolling rosters, and can you believe it? The Hawks have got 9 players signed already, and the latest being Max Darling. Gordy, what's your take?
Max Darling, look, I think he's a small big, if that's the way to describe it, I guess. I think not the caliber wise. Don't get carried away with me saying this, but sort of I'm told bit from what I've seen, it's a bit more like Draymond Green, like a bit undersized, but plays that 4-5, can maybe play the 5 role maybe because he's got a big wingspan. He's not going to be Draymond Green, all right? Don't hold me to that. Don't say those sorts of things, but that sort of thing. So, once again, depending on, you've got the rolling rosters there up on the screen, depending on who else they sign, like you could see him be getting some big minutes. So, maybe. So,
yeah, I guess what you're trying to say is for a smaller big, his max size. So,
yeah.
Sorry, mate. Early start. How's ISO going for you guys, by the way? So what I'm liking, I think Deng Deng out of that roster is probably going to play just a bit part role.
Yep, I agree.
So there's going to be a big issue, I guess, as far as Max Darling goes. We're going to talk about our lockdown locks top 5 players that we've selected, and Max Darling isn't one of them. But we don't know whether these Euro guys come in at that Imagine 900,000 price, which he would probably be a no-go or at least a question mark. But what if he came in at that Dan Trist 400k price?
That's when you'd want to be looking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the price you want.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard, doesn't it? Until we see these prices, we're just not going to know with some of these guys that are brand new to the league whether they're going to be relevant or not.
Yeah. But the other man in that rotation, while we got it on here, he's not in our discussion today about our early locks, is Sam Froling.
Spro.
He's not in there, but
he will be
priced at about 550k.
Yep.
Liam has him starting at the moment in his roster on nbl.com.au. Yep. You got to start, like, he's shown plenty of fantasy potential, double threat for sure. So, Big Samson is
good point.
Pretty exciting.
Glad for mentioning Liam's depth charts that he's done in the last couple of days, Benny. Thanks for that. Ours are very similar, but we do have a little bit of differences because it's basically Benny and I and Banksy put them together as on the fly sort of thing. Most of the time, it's Benny and I because we're early risers generally, so we're on the tweets earlier than old Banksy sleep. Banksy's getting pretty old now. He sleeps in and then he has a nutritious breakfast and that sort of thing first. So, but just a reminder to all the players out there that and fantasy coaches that we will be updating this quite regularly. So even though I tend to think that Liam's is a bit more of a gospel, with future signings coming up, we'll be updating ours as we go. So jump on to basketballblokes.com/rolling rosters or just use the menu bar if you go to basketballblokes.com and you'll be able to jump on and have a look at what we reckon at the moment. And if you don't like what we've put in there and you don't like it, maybe hit us up with something on Twitter, which is at @bball_blokes, or on Facebook, basketball blokes, and start the conversation off. Speaking of which, I can see there's a few people that have joined us live on the Twitter live, and I've just put a post up there in the comments that welcoming them all and hit us up with some questions. So it is a little bit of a delay. We're recording in the future, but it's only about 10 seconds or 15 seconds or something like that. So hit us up with some questions, and we can always double back and see how we go. Oh, one of our Julian O'Brien's just joined in on the live. I can see in here as well. So one of our listeners and big Hawkhead, so he'll be happy we're talking about the Hawks a little bit.
Yeah, going to have to move on though now. Sorry, Julian. I know you mentioned early risers before.
Got a bit of an echo apparently. I'm just being told.
Okay. Oh well, we're going to have to live with it, unfortunately, if that's going to be the case. But trying this
1.69 milliseconds of delay you've got on us or something, Benny.
Yeah, maybe. Might be the office there. But speaking of early risers that you mentioned before, Mojave King seems to be getting a bit of first round lottery, high lottery selection drafts buzz. So hopefully he will be someone who potentially starts. So keep your eye out for him. He's not in our lockdown locks at the moment. So
he's a lowdown. Keep on the lowdown for me, just quietly. I want to see his role first, but. No doubt, skillful. You don't get in a top 10 draft list without being a fairly decent sort of a player. Remember, I think LaMelo Ball. What was he? I think he got to number 1 on those draft lists at one stage. But I think he started off 3 or 4 or something like that, didn't he? First, before he even played an NBL game, I think.
He was in the teens.
Oh, he's in the teens.
Yeah, a bit further down.
So you can just think what people's talent levels thinking with Mojave. So and like I mentioned before, with the smaller rosters, he's going to be definitely playing some minutes. So see how we go.
Now I've moved the rolling rosters over to the New Zealand Breakers, and as you mentioned earlier, Boyd can't do anything in sequence. Lamar Patterson. That was the biggest news, obviously, and what was interesting as well is if you're looking at that depth chart, listening to Overtime, they're going to look at playing him at the 2 with Corey Webster coming off the bench. That was the most interesting part of that, I thought.
Yeah, well, that's what Liam mentioned on NBL Overtime during the week, and we'll see if that comes to fruition, I guess. But I guess we were all kind of looking forward to that Webster backcourt. So Webster times 2. So we'll wait and see, but it was something, there was a bit of a hint. I think it was Liam who even hinted that, Lamar was their backup plan, but sounds like, Hobson might have priced himself out of a, guaranteed contract, and Lamar's swept in there and taken the contract straight away. So.
How do we feel about this signing for New Zealand? Do we feel that Lamar is an upgrade on Hobson, or do we feel that they're pretty equivalent in that rotation that they've already got?
Same, slightly different, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're kind of similar. So
I would say similar.
It's going to see what they get. Obviously, in Brisbane, LP demanded the ball quite a bit, which is going to be interesting to see how that works in the New Zealand lineup.
That was going to be my exact next point, Boydie. I see some New Zealand Breakers fans out there saying, well, maybe we can still sign Hobson. I still hope we still get him. And there's not like there wouldn't be enough balls on the court to start with, but this is something I talked about way back early on when we had when we were looking at the 50% pay cuts and the like. So New Zealand are a team that should not suffer any revenue loss at all.
No.
They get all their rostered players at a 50% discount or whatever the terms were, depending on how much they were making at the time. And so they would obviously have to pay a bunch of luxury tax, but in theory, they could just pay a stack of luxury tax and spend whatever they were going to spend anyway. So distinct advantage for the Breakers from a roster building perspective. moving on, we've had a bit of feedback come through about your bookshelf, Mr. Oracle. Trying to be Liam, I'm not too sure. But there's a Banksy, I wanted to ask you, because I've been looking at these books and there's a couple of yellow and black ones there that I recognised what they are. They're definitely the For Dummies style of book. So do you think it's fantasy coaching for dummies or ISO haircuts for dummies? What do you reckon?
It's got to be the haircut. Based on the Oracle's ranking from last season, I can't say it's anything that could be anything outside of the realms of haircut for dummies. But
well, what is it? What is it, mate? What are they?
Tell us all.
I've got a couple of dummies books, and they were shits and giggles presents when I left a former workplace, and they are the Economics for Dummies is the first one, and Value Investing for Dummies is the second one.
That's nice of your banker mates to give that to you when you leave. Doesn't surprise me at all. But look, segue, hey. Economics is what it's all about today, guys, when we're selecting our 5 locks, because we have to consider whether or not they've got the scarcity of these 250k players. Can you afford the opportunity costs not to have them in your team? Because we're going to have a heap of these players. So let's do it, guys. We've got through all the news. You happy with that? Let's get to the lockdown locks.
Let's do it.
All right.
I'm on massive delay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I still got you, mate. Still got you.
Oh, beautiful. And I'm getting messages in. Hang on. Patterson makes others better. He will shine in this setting. Lock him in as a captain choice from Julian O'Brien.
Oh, what do you think,
Thanks,
Banksy, captain?
Like it.
All right. So let's get on to the lockdown locks now. Because we've got an Oracle amongst us, he wanted to put a disclaimer in. So, Boydie, here is your opportunity to disclaim away the rules about these lockdown, mate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just saying we're going pretty early on these, so there's a hint of unknown still, obviously, because we haven't seen any basketball. So I'm just saying these are just early. These are our early lockdowns, so these are ones for your maybe a little back pocket for a bit later on. So, but don't quote us on it just yet. We'll do a follow up locks. I think this is a good little pod. I like
it. They're partially locks.
Well, look at this.
They're locks. My 5 are locks. I just don't know about your 5. So
right.
We'll see.
So, as host, my name's Ben Russell, not related to Dwayne, but I will be the host of what we hope, fellas, is the first and only, for the sake of humanity, lockdown lock that we ever have to put up with. Agreed? We do not want any more. So, the rules for you two, you cannot phone a friend, because let's be honest, you're doing that now, and I don't think you've got too many more options. So for the first one, if you want to give us a lock it in, Benny, I'm more than happy to go with that. So let's play along. Bordy, you know you're first up, mate.
Am I? Oh, Jesus. Okay.
You've given me your list. You've got me. Give me your number 5 lock. Do you want to lock it in?
I'm going to lock my number 5 in, DJ 3J.
Beautiful, mate. I've got some DJ stats going up here. So
get us some DJ stats on the line. Obviously, at the moment, looking like he's a possibility to start in Sydney, and I think Liam even commented about that in there as well. Excuse me, the beers are getting to me. I'm on the mids though, okay? So don't be alarmed, those people out there. Last season in college, averaged about 13 points a game, about 4 rebounds a game. Good 3-point shooter, 2 3 points a game. So, if he gets minutes, and I think he's going to get minutes, and he's going to come in at a fairly cheap price, we think he might even come in at that 250k mark from last season. Is that right, Benny?
Yeah, of course he will.
I think he is, he's prime for a lock on your bench shooting guard position, because he's going to be a starter. He's going to be getting minutes, and he's going to be cheap, and that's kind of what you want from a bench spot. In fantasy, because if he's getting minutes, he's going to get you fantasy points, and he's cheap, which means you can spend a bit more premium on other players elsewhere.
Beautiful. Banksy, you don't have DJ Vasiljevic on your top 5 at the moment. He's definitely someone that I think you should keep an eye on, and I'll be talking about him a little later on. So someone I'm going to talk about now, though, is my number 5, and that is Jack McVeigh.
Ooh.
Okay, so judging by that reaction, I know, just to put it in perspective, I know that these guys, what the top 5 of everyone else is, and these guys are finding out for the first time. Jack McVeigh, later be featured by Banksy, not featured at all by Bordy, interestingly. So I'm going to bring up some of Jack's box score from last season. So here we go. Jack McVeigh, basketballblokes.com, player stats, player game logs. You can find all the players in there from last season. Now, Jack, you can see he had quite a good start to the season, apart from that -1 in the first round. But then you're going to see, as we're scrolling through this row, if you're listening on the podcast, then I'd say check out the video. But essentially, McVeigh had a 16-game run there, where he wasn't getting anything done, starting with a 5-point game against Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. So over the space of 16 games, he averaged 6.125 fantasy points for that period, and finished the season. The last 4 games, he averaged 30 points per game. So Jack is going to be priced. I had the expected price up there before. Let me just get that up again.
He finished at a price of $550K.
Yeah, so he'll be priced at his average, which the price projection I've got here at 490,000. He's probably going to sit on the bench. What I'm going to do here is bring up Adelaide's depth chart, because this is really something that I think is the main reason why he's so just tempting at the moment, apart from the fact that I rate him as a player, apart from when you're playing against him, because he's very energetic, Ballantyne-esque, if you're looking at a footy perspective. But there is no other wing player there. Obi Chain might play. Now, I read into this a little bit with him training in Sydney earlier, and I thought Obi might be heading off elsewhere. That might actually not be the case. I was trying to be Dick Tracy, and I ended up just turning out to be a dick, I think. There's nothing. I think this is the roster. They're going to get a point guard and maybe a next star from there. McVeigh is going to get plenty of opportunity, I think. So I think he's very enticing. Bordy, why don't you think he's was he even an option for you?
He's an option, I guess, but I don't know. I'm just worried about him being the weakest link in that starting lineup, scoring wise. I noticed his bigger games last year is when he scored around that sort of 16 points mark, somewhere along those lines. I know he can get rebounds as well, but he's also going to have Humph and DJ to fight against for those rebounds. So I just feel like the roster's not shaping up for him. If they didn't get those 2 big guys and they had him maybe sliding over to that stretch 4 a little bit as well, then I would be more comfortable having him as a lock.
Banksy, save your argument for later on, mate, okay?
So let me get this right, Dusty. You don't have McVeigh in your top 5 at all.
Do not have him in my top 5.
Have him at number 1.
No, hold your argument.
Hold your argument. In my top 5.
There you go, Banks. Just save it for later. All right. Banksy, you're up next, mate, with someone that will feature in all of our teams, but you get the honour of leading the way. It's Ruben Tarangi.
Okay, I'll be rolling with Tarangi. All right, yes, I definitely have him in my top 5. He's not my number 1 pick, but he's definitely my top 5. So I guess with Tarangi, the reason he's got to be on the watch list is he logged 8 minutes per game last season, and that's a career low for him over his many years he's been in the league since his rookie season. And it's a real strange one, because the season prior he actually averaged a career high 10.5 points a game, almost 22 minutes per game the season prior. And as a result, it was the 3rd worst decline in the league in fantasy average from the previous season. So he's one of the worst in the league for declining on his past season from a fantasy perspective. So obviously we know the reason. It was highly documented last season. He was really fighting in that logjam of Patterson, Singler, Braun, Glidden, all those wing players that they had. He's not going to set the league on fire, but again, it's when you're looking for value, it's that added opportunity, and we're going to need cash cows to start the season like we do every season. And he should really be priced at that 250k mark, and that's really what we want for our bench spots. And I guess where he sits at the moment with the current rolling rosters we've got there, not just ours, but also Liam Santa Maria's rolling roster, we've got him as starting that position at this stage. So just represents great value due to that increased opportunity he's going to get at the Phoenix. Now he's no longer behind that logjam of wings, if you like.
Now, Bordy, that goes perfectly into your number 4 selection, which was Ruben Tungarangi as well.
Yep.
Tell us why you like Ruben, mate.
Banks has just stolen everything I was going to say about him. Going to start for the Phoenix. They want him to play that game. I think they got excited about his game against the against the Boomers for the Tall Blacks in when was that? About a year ago now, or earlier this year. I can't remember when it was. So in that game, he played about 30 minutes, had 21 points, which was 3. He hit 4 threes. He had 6 rebounds, 5 assists. He just did everything. So obviously he's not going to do that every game, but we've seen previously what he can do, as Banksy mentioned in his previous year in NBL 19. He had averaged 22 fantasy points a game, and he went down to 6 as an average for NBL 20. So I can see him poking back up to almost that 22 points fantasy-wise a game, which means he should get a lot of value out of him. And as my comment before, he could be perfect for a bench spot because he's cheap, he's going to get minutes, and he's going to score some fantasy points. So it could be a nice little value maker.
Beautiful. Well, I'll talk about him much later on. So we're up to you again, Banksy.
Just going to jump in here. Warney DT's just joined us on the live apparently. So just welcome the great man over across from DT Talk.
Yeah, hopefully that echo's not too bad, Warney. I feel judged now by the pros. No. So next up, number 4, Banksy. You've given me your number 4 selection. Do you want to lock it in?
Who is my number 4? Are we talking about Hump?
Oh yeah, lock it in, Hump.
Big Isaac Humphries. He will be my number 4. He's a real intriguing option. We obviously have seen Hump back in the 2017-18 season. If you can recall back then, he was priced at around that 600k mark, but he was a backup center at the Kings. So I think we should ideally see him at a similar price based on the output he had in that 1 year in the league. But obviously the difference is we're going to see him in a starting role with Adelaide now. So he's got 3 years more experience behind him than he did when he was the backup at the Kings. And I guess more recently, if we look at what he's done outside of this league, he averaged roughly 11 points, 7 boards, and a block a game in almost 22 minutes. That was more recently in the G League. But, I mean, we're talking about a 7-footer at his price in this league with his potential. I just hope we do get him at that price and he's not priced at a premium. It's all going to come down to price for me. But if we do see him priced at what he averaged in his past season in this league, then he's pretty much a no-brainer for me.
I don't like your chances, Banksy.
Yeah, either do I, and that's why he's not in my top 5 locks. I'll give it away a few hints for my other ones, but I just think he's going to be priced at those G League NBA guys coming back price, which is what 1.5 mil previously of Creek and Bogut. Benny, we agreeing on that?
Yeah, I think he'll be priced the same as Dengadell at 1.5 is my guess, but then you wouldn't touch him. But
you wouldn't. But hopefully that's not the case.
Hopefully
so we can slot him in. But
he'll be on every fantasy
we'll see on
team.
that price.
If he comes in at 600k or whatever it was his last price in fantasy back in NBL 18 or 19, whatever, then he should be on every fantasy team at that price.
Okay. So that's Banksy's number 4. My number 4 is up next, and that is, wearing my Phoenix top, is Cam Glidden. Now, Cam Glidden I've got projected at $680,000. So Cam, he I'm going to do, we're just rolling through some highlights here. What I might do is I'll just show you Cam Glidden's prior year averages. So let me just bring that up. So this is what Banksy was talking about before as far as Ruben Tarangi being the third worst decline. You can get to this page, Basketball Blokes prior year averages, and you see Ruben there. Just above Ruben is Cam Glidden. So 18.9 fantasy points he averaged last season. He'd be priced at that, at the price I mentioned earlier. Before that, averaged 32.8 fantasy points a game. Few things that I really like about Cam. So Simon Mitchell came out, or had an interview with Phoenix Media. They come out and said that Cam will have a heavy responsibility offensively, and also repeated that he'd look to get him involved heavily, having the ball in his hands and spacing the floor, which we all know he can do very well. But I think Cam is someone who's given this, the way they're going to use him, I think he'll definitely exceed the 32.8 fantasy points that he averaged 2 seasons ago, because he's moving to the Phoenix. I've just got up here of Spatial Jam, and I've covered up the Phoenix beautifully here, which is no good. But as far as looking at the net overall ratings for offense, the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix was the second best team, equal second for pace, whereas Brisbane was the third worst team for pace in Lemanis's system. We all know last year that having your Phoenix players was great to target your players against, but also Phoenix players were some of the best fantasy players that we had. I think the move to the new system is awesome. Banksy, you have him at number 3. Care to add anything about Cam Glidden, because you're obviously a fan as well?
No, you've nailed it. And again, it just comes down to that further opportunity, doesn't it? He, again, struggled to get the minutes that he would have liked last season, and he's likely to get those minutes with a starting role at the Phoenix. So it's all about, as you said, that transition from a team to another, where he's going to see that run and gun play, but also getting that's there's no competition at this stage for that starting role at the shooting guard position. So again, represents value for money, doesn't he?
Certainly does. So next up, so we're up to a number 3. That was Banksy's number 3. Boydie, you've got Ty Webster.
I have. So Ty Webster, obviously brother of Corey, younger brother of Corey, has signed to the Breakers. He's a local, being a New Zealander. He's played the last couple of years in Europe. So he did have his averages up on my screen here somewhere, but now I have piss-farted around and lost them. Averages about 12 points or something along those lines, 12 to 13 points. Hang on a minute, I'm even in the wrong area of this as well. Jeez, how good am I going? 10 or 11 points and a couple of two and a half rebounds and 4 assists, somewhere along those lines. So I've actually written here to give you a bit of, I've sort of gone with trying to compare them to players in fantasy, in our fantasy game. And I think worst case scenario, Ty's like a KD sort of scorer in fantasy, but I think he's going to be much better than that, because he's going to be starting. So we're getting more minutes than KD does. And I think I haven't written down who I was thinking he was going to be. But, he's going to be a bit more of a pass-first point guard in our league, but he'll also score as well. So I don't know who I was going to compare him to. I didn't write it down now, but I think he's going to be scoring around about that 30 points. He's going to come in at about the 900K mark, you would think, being one of the, like, your imagines from last year. Starter minutes, and I think even Liam mentioned that he's basically going to be the equivalent of an import production-wise. So I think that sort of tells you what he's going to be like.
Yeah, and obviously we don't follow that EuroLeagues very closely, but I think just to add, I also have Ty Webster, the tie breaker, the next worldwide Webster who puts it internet. He will be obviously starting. Corey's coming off the bench, so he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. To give you some perspective of the standard of basketball, Brock Motum, who Perth were really in for and got priced out of, apparently, would have been the perfect Nick Kay replacement. He has now signed for the club that Ty was playing for. So, look, I think that Webster, the tiebreaker, is a lock. I think that you're getting the $1 million import at a 10% discount, like you just sort of mentioned, but you get none of the chemistry issues. Like, he's going to go in there, he was just going to get rolling right from the start. I think that's a big thing. Banksy, you've got Webster as your number 2. Anything else to add, or just agreeing with us?
No, trying to decipher through Bordy's dribble there. I think he kind of nailed it there. I guess the one thing, it is a little bit interesting. I mean, where does this leave Corey Webster in that rotation? Obviously, as it's been mentioned, there's a big chance that he'll come off the bench, but we did see him do a lot of the ball handling duties for New Zealand last season when he was actually playing in the league. So it'll be interesting as to the rotation New Zealand will run with if they are to start Webster and Patterson and have Webster come off the bench, and whether Webster will come in and sort of rotate between those two with the ball handling duties or not. So it will be interesting to see how Webster coming off the bench will affect both Ty and Lamar as well. Beautiful.
So that's your number 2, Banksy. Number 2 for me is someone that's been mentioned earlier. It is DJ3J, Dejan Vasiljevic. I think we are going to be so spoiled this year. For the last 2 seasons, getting a starter at 250k, it just was almost unheard of, really. And regardless of whether DD plays, it seems as though DJ is going to start, and it seems as though he is going to be the best fantasy prospect. And the reason I have him number 2 is I kind of framed this in the way that, how do I make my team? Who is the first person that I click on if I'm going to build a team? And I build from the bench up, and this would be the second person. DJ would be the second person I'd click behind my number 1 in building my team. So I agree with Bordy, who has him in his top 5. I think he's a must-have, definitely. Next up, we've got, where are we up to?
You're telling the story, Benny.
Yeah, I am. Bordy, this is your number 2, I believe.
My number 2, is it me?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I'm gonna go with number 2.
Got it on the board.
Do I change it? No, I'm gonna keep it the same. I'm gonna go with the Illawarra Hawks import signing from a couple of weeks ago now, or a week or so ago. Tyler Harvey. $1,000, $1 million. Sorry, he's going to come in at the price. He's going to be a scorer. His ceiling, and I think it was even mentioned, there's a possibility that one of the guys on Overtime even mentioned he could lead the league in scoring. So I don't want to put the moz on him, but there's obviously his ceiling could be somewhere along the lines of Cotton in fantasy. He's going to be that combo sort of guard. I've said he's a ceiling, right? And haven't seen him in the NBL yet. So, and we'll go back to my disclaimer at what I should have written down what minute mark the disclaimer was on. So apologies. I just think he looks like he's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be scoring. He can shoot the 3. I mean, what did he score in that G League game? 58 points or something like that. If someone can hit 58 points in a G League game, I think he's going to be able to score in the NBL. And on that Hawks lineup, I just think he's going to be a focal point for the offense. So I think he's going to be my first import on the board.
Like it?
Yeah, he was probably the next closest. I was a bit concerned that he might be that off-the-ball shooter, but I think Gorge did that interview with the Perth radio station.
Yep.
They're going to play him at the point guard, aren't they? So,
pretty much.
And get a defensive cotton stopper was the phrase. Was that what they said?
Something along those lines.
Yeah. So, as that second guard. So, like, if he's going to be the playmaker as well at $1 million, it's put him in for 6th or 7th on my locks. I think it's definitely enticing.
Yeah, look at the rolling roster for the Hawks, and I guess the 2 big names there currently are Harvey and Dengadell. Now, Dengadell's a scorer as well, but remember, he's coming back from G League, so he's going to have that he's going to probably come in at that 1.5 mil price, which I think you're better off. They're both still, they're sight unseen in the NBL, so they're both. There's a bit of a risk to them. We don't want to talk about imports that haven't worked out with big names, such as a couple of years ago when we had we got all sucked into the name of Alonzo G.
Oh no.
So yeah, sorry Banksy. Banksy goes to bed for about 3 days after he hears that name every time now. But but both those guys are probably going to put up points and fantasy points. But you're getting the significant discount with Tyler Harvey being a $1 million import compared to Dengadell coming in at probably that 1.5 mil local G League player, basically.
Very good. So the time has come. We're all picking our number one locks, guys. So
can you all hear me?
Yeah, I got you, Boyd, mate. So my number one is going to be someone that's been mentioned earlier by both of the guys. Is going to be a $250,000 starting.
Have I lost everyone?
Forward. No, I got you, Boyd, mate. For my Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. And that's going to be Ruben Tarangi. Now, guys, something I am keen on watching this season. It's called the Ruben Sandwich. Okay? Can Ruben sandwich his best six man of the year season with his crap and put another season together for the Phoenix? Can he sandwich that crappy season with Brisbane? And I think I'm eating all that up. All the news is what you want to hear. Simon Mitchell come out and said that they want to get him on the boards a lot more as well. So they're going to use him in a lot of roles. Playmaking, he's a good pick and pop player. We feel there's upside to attack the rim a bit more and get on the boards a bit more. So, look, I think that at 250K, I might even consider him as a field option. I'm going to bring up something that was mentioned earlier as well, which was this. So Banksy, when discussing Ruben before, was saying he averaged 22.2. Once again, that was a six-man role.
Yep.
He's starting now. Push that up to 30, I'm saying. So just fantasy gold.
Benny's big calls early.
So that's my number one. The Ruben sandwich will happen, and I'm enjoying eating it all up. And he would be the first person I would put into my team. He's my number one lockdown lock. Next up, Banksy, your number one, someone I mentioned earlier.
Well, after listening to you two over the last 10 minutes, I'm starting to question my number one, and I've got to say my my top five was done a couple of weeks back without a lot of research, but I did just on initial thoughts, I had McVeigh as my number one spot in the lockdown locks, and
I don't mind it.
I know we've covered it off, but again, I think Boydie doesn't even have him in any of his top five. But look, I think again when we're obviously
he's
looking
he's a close 10th. Does that give you a bit more confidence?
Well, it's not close enough, but again, I just think it comes down to opportunity, and right now he just doesn't have any competition in that current roster at Adelaide. When we're looking
he's
at
a gun as well.
So he is. I think he's got so much upside, and if he's giving the opportunity. I mean, I know you kind of covered it off, but if we only look back to those last 4 games of last season where he actually was given the opportunity, I mean, he put up some really solid numbers. He put up 2 games, 40 plus, and a 28 just in the last 3 of his last 4 games last season. So, if he's going to get that starting role this season, there's no reason why we can't see him sort of push those averages up.
Boydie, finishes off, mate.
On my number one.
Go for it.
I agree with everything Matt just said then as well, but I just couldn't squeeze him in my top 5. I think he's probably close. He's probably like a 6 or a 7. I'm just scared about what that other signing will be at Adelaide for McVeigh. But, excuse me, my number one has already been mentioned as well already. So my number one player I'll be clicking on when I jump into the fantasy website when it is all opened and refreshed for our NBL 21 season will be Cam Glidden of the Phoenix, and I've got my Phoenix, repping some Phoenix gear today. So I just think no brainer. He's going to be part of that offensive system. He's going to be cheap. Another thing I was going to say with Banksy's choice there, depending on how I work it out, with my team in fantasy, I might have both Tarangi and Glidden, and possibly because of their price, I could possibly have both of those guys as bench players. So that's why McVeigh is not in my top 5 locks, because I might already have a small forward in there with Ruben Tarangi. So it comes down to room. I might not have the room to put McVeigh in there as a lockdown lock, depending on who else gets signed. So at the moment, and people are going to say, who else are you going to put there in that small forward spot? Well, as a starter small forward, I might end up having one of the imports. So we don't know if Prather's going to pass a significant fitness test that Melbourne United are talking about giving him. Hobson's still on the board there. Patterson's around there still. Who knows who Brisbane are going to sign now that Patterson's gone. So there's all these question marks with imports. The Hawks might sign. I don't know who they're going to sign. Sydney have still got some moving around to do. So that's why
a disclaimer.
Yeah,
a lot of fence sitting by the sounds.
Yep. A bit of fence sitting,
but understandably.
And I don't know. The Oracle never tells.
All right, so we put a tweet out, and we'll do some more apologies. We've mentioned a few names here as well. But we had Paddy on Twitter reply to us with some names that he considers locks at this early stage, and all names that look pretty good to us. Ty Webster, Dengadal, Magnay, Jerich, and Glidden. So some familiar ones in there, and also like Magnay, Dengadal could be anything as well. So it's we're going to be spoilt for choice, and overall, I know it's so far away, and who knows how this is going to go. Like I said, hopefully we're never doing lockdown locks again. But there's going to be so many options.
Yeah, so, I mean, even Benny, I'm going to jump in there. Sorry, mate, to cut you off a little bit. But you just mentioned the tweet there we got. Jerich is an interesting one because, like I said, with the rosters trimming down and with only the 3 imports down to 2. He's one of those guys that's going to see a lot of extra time, whereas Newble was the starter there and locked in a lot of the year, although obviously Jerich started a lot when Kouat-Noi was injured. Both those guys now are going to be starting and getting significant, probably more minutes, both Noi and Jerich. So, they possibly could be warming up into a lock as well. Another one that's fairly cheap, and he's just changed clubs, and we haven't even talked about him, is Sunday Detch. He's moved across to Adelaide. He's probably going to be a big part of that starting lineup. He will be on the starting lineup. I think his finishing price in fantasy was 800 or 900k, wasn't it? Something along those lines last year. But now he's, we've talked about it significantly last year. He was in that rut at Illawarra where he was, a member of the 15. Seemed like they had 15 point guard shooting guards there, taking all the wing minutes. But now he's on his own. He's free. He doesn't really have another challenger there in the starting lineup. I know Adelaide have got to sign a import, and they're only signing one, and it's going to be a gun from what they are saying. But he's also another one that could quite easily shoot up into the top 5 for me.
Very good. I know I sent if any of you got the run sheet on there, I think was there a list? No, I trimmed that out. But there's a bunch of names that are going to come in at under $1 million, including Sunday Detch. What have I got here? Harry Froling now as well. JLA, I don't know if you touched that there. We're going to have DD potentially back again. He'll be back at that just under $1 million as well. Angus Glover.
Our boy Yena.
Twice.
What about Yena?
Yeah, I mean,
would you touch DD again?
Double D.
Would you get burned twice?
Well, he's going to have minutes now, isn't he? He's like, as I said, he's another one. There's another one that is like a big, might play a major role in that offense and defense now, rather than having 3 imports last year.
I agree. It's just interesting to see when a player has burnt people in the season prior. He does tend to go on that never again list. So interesting one.
All right, Boyd. That's been fun. It's been isolation lockdown locks, and thanks for having a chat. It's been good to catch up with you, especially yourself, Banksy. It's been far too long. Everyone else needs to look after themselves out there as well, particularly those guys in lockdown, and do the right thing.
And And with saying, sorry,
Yep.
Benny, to jump
Go
in,
for
there is a lot of the players and their fantasy stats we've touched on. We obviously put together a bit of an article on our website there a few weeks back. So if you guys want to go to basketballblokes.com/fantasy watch list, there's an article there that we put together, which includes a lot of the guys we've just spoken about and a lot of their fantasy numbers, both, moving forward and based on what they did last season as well.
All right. Anything else we need to tell them, Boyd?
No, that's it. Just hit us up on Twitter, as I mentioned at the start, bball_blokes, Facebook, Basketball Blokes. You can find us now on the Banksy-designed website, basketballblokes.com. That's where you find the rolling rosters we keep talking about. You can go with the stats we were talking about before, which is the changes between prior year stats and the differences between the two. We've got all sorts of stuff on there. So jump in and have a look and hit us up if you've got any comments and all that sort of stuff.
And
4 months to go, boys. 4 months.
Yeah, that's it. Unless they've been pushed back to Feb.